But I'd like you to first speak more around that competition in the industry.
Okay. So competition in the industry is, we have like over 130 pharmaceutical manufacturing companies in Nigeria. So there's a lot of competition there. But besides the local competition, you have a lot of multinationals that play in the country. And then you have consumers who trust branded goods more than that. And lately we've been having an influx of Indian and Asian pharmaceutical companies too. So the competition is pretty strong.
Yeah, but how do you think the local manufacturers stack up to these other players in the industry?
Funny enough, I think the local manufacturers are actually doing pretty good. The only issue is the dependence on FX, which you rightly stated. And it's because they're dependent on a lot of imports. So starting from raw materials, which is referred to as APIs, so that's the active pharmaceutical ingredients. We don't produce them in Nigeria, so they have to be brought in from foreign countries, especially India and China. So those are some of the things that affect the local producers. And also, power is a major problem. So they literally have to run, self-generate their power, and so that affects the business. So
that's one of the major operational challenges they face in there. Can you speak to some of the others that the local manufacturers, face in Nigeria?
I think, like I rightly mentioned, the major one is power, and then you have counterfeit drugs. So there's a lot of, because there's no structured distribution channel, you have a lot of fake drugs that come into the system. And so when someone mistakenly gets the wrong drugs, it limits the amount of trust you have in the local drugs that you have available. So that's why you see most times they suffer for that, because people would rather trust like a branded good or like something from a multinational. All
right, but we've seen quite interesting work coming from the regulators to try and tackle the fake drugs in the market. As well, we've also seen some interesting use of technology as well to help curb this. Do you think these efforts are enough?
I think there need to be more talks between stakeholders and the government to actually understand the problem and be able to bring the right solution. So there's been a lot of talk about the distribution channel, the NDDG, which is the National Drug Distribution Guideline, and that basically is supposed to have like a tracking system so that you can track the drugs from the source to the end user, so that if there's any issue, that can be done. That can be traced. You can trace it back, and it will also eliminate fake drugs. However, it's not been implemented yet. So there's a lot of talks going on. It's supposed to be implemented 2019, but they're still trying to figure out the best ways to make everyone happy.
But when you look at the size of this industry, the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria puts it at about 1.3 billion. This is quite small for a population of 7 in Nigeria.
Yeah.
What initiatives do you think can be done to broaden this market?
It's that dependency on importations. So I think the biggest thing that would have to be done to make the industry sustainable would be for us to actually produce the APIs. That's the raw materials that you use to produce these drugs. And they're usually made from petrochemicals and natural resources. But we need a refinery that actually makes the perfect byproduct for us so that we can stop depending on foreign countries.
All right, so it still goes back to the inputs,
yes,
getting back in there. But sector accounts for about 0.25% of GDP, and we have 132 manufacturers in there. I want to think, this with the amount of activity in Nigeria, when you look at the population size, when you look at the demographics here and there, we have a huge disease burden. There's quite a number of need for some of these drugs that are in there, and you can just look at the amount of chemists you have in Nigeria, and all that. You spoke about distribution channels earlier, but do you think more needs to be done, especially so that people don't get drugs easily off the counter, so that it's better regulated?
I don't think that's necessarily the issue here. I don't think it's about what they get. I think that the thing is, like I said, we have too much dependency on importations. And even though we locally produce some of these drugs, over 80% of the demand is still being met by imports. So that means even the local companies are not producing as much.
Okay.
They're not producing enough. So.
Okay. All right, then let's look at quality issues in there, because we're looking at a stage where we'll go beyond just manufacturing for Nigeria, which we're not meeting the demand. But at some point, I want to believe that these local manufacturers will be at least trying to get some of their products out of Nigeria to either neighboring countries or even Europe or and America, because of some of the unique drugs that we have. How do you think we can better work on the quality of the drugs coming out of Nigerian manufacturers?
I think this is definitely key, and I think the major certification that is needed is something called the WHO GMP. So that's the World Health Organization General Manufacturing Practices. And so out of the 132 companies that I have in the report, just 4 in Nigeria actually have this certification. And this certification says that, basically just says that they are producing, the facility produces at international standard. So companies need to have this kind of certification for their goods to be able to be recognized outside the country, so that when they're seen outside, people actually want to buy. So it would lead to, if you have that, it leads to more exportation. All
right, then I want to speak to tariff controls, because I know that you mentioned the marketplace so far. We're seeing local manufacturers getting less than 20% of the market, when you have the multinationals and all the other players in there. But from the point of tariffs, though, do you think we can get the local manufacturers to get a better share of the market with improved tariff regimes?
I think so, but I think that's actually why the CET, which is the common external tariffs, that was why it was reversed. So just to give a clear picture of that, initially they put like a 5 to 20% tax on APIs, that's the raw materials, and then they put a 0% tax on imported drugs. So there was a kickback from stakeholders to say, this is ridiculous. You're going to literally kill us with this kind of tariff. So what the government did was to reverse that, because APIs it's key for the industry, so they made that 0%. And then what they did was put a tariff on imported goods that we could adequately produce in Nigeria of 20%, so that encourages local production and doesn't kill their business.